Hi Tulip Tribe, happy Wednesday. So glad you guys are here with us today. So much good stuff to talk about. I had to write myself a list because I asked a question in the Tulip Tribe on Monday. And I have since learned to be careful what you ask for because you gave me lots of answers and lots of input and lots of questions. So I'm going to circle back to that because they were excellent questions. But we are talking about weddings today. Weddings in, I guess I would say, the post-COVID world or the exiting COVID world or the transitioning world. Everybody's states are in a little different position. So some of these things might not apply to you yet, but stick them in your bag of tricks so you've got them to pull out when you need them. That's what it's all about. Don't forget to put your tulip in if you are a member of the Tulip Tribe. And Susie will help you out on YouTube if you can't find your tulip, and Caledonia will help you out on Facebook if you can't find your tulip. Before we came on, I joked, to those of you that remember watching sitcoms in the 80s, you would hear the announcer say, filmed before a live studio audience. Well, we have a live studio audience today, I'm not kidding. So I'm here, Leanne is here.
Hey everybody!
Parker's here.
Hi!
Maurice is on Facebook.
Hi!
Caledonia is here with us in the studio today.
Hello!
And Carolyn is on YouTube today.
Hi!
So it's a party. David just left. He had other things to do today. So, that and we were out of chairs. So we kicked David out. But so it's really exciting having lots of people in here, lots of good feedback. So housekeeping. Turn your screen. If you're on your tablet or your phone, you'll get a larger picture. If you don't like the comments, if they bother you as they're scrolling up, excuse me, tickle. Swipe them off to the side. Already told you to put your tulips in. I also want you to answer a question for me. What is the most personalized thing you have done for someone's wedding? I'm not going to give any more than that. Just throw that out there and tell me what you've done, and we'll check back in on that in a little bit. So first off, I did a little homework. Like every good teacher, I assign homework and I do homework. Looking at some of the trends that were coming out for 2021, because it's been kind of a weird year, and 2022. So I was looking at the micro wedding concept, the smaller, more intimate weddings. Doesn't necessarily mean a smaller budget. What we are seeing quite a bit of is people who had done a wedding last year, scheduled a wedding, but then postponed it and have decided, we're not going to wait anymore. They still had that budget. They still had that bucket of money, if you will. And instead of doing 250 people in a giant ballroom, they're doing 25 people with a sit-down dinner. They're doing fancy. Sounds kind of fun. Sounds like lots of opportunity for us to make lots of pretty flowers. So with those micro weddings, things are more detailed. They're more intimate. They're more personal. And that's something I want to touch on today. So that's why I asked you a little bit about personalization. The other thing that I noticed as I was doing some research was looking at dress sales and dress styles. So amazingly, dress sales haven't dropped off. That's some optimistic brides, I'd say. And the styles were also very interesting as well. Lots of ruffles. I'm seeing lots of ruffles on the runway for later this year and for next year. I'm seeing floral dresses, not just florals, as in bouquets to carry, but floral dresses, which I thought was very interesting. Lots of color. And I'm seeing some colored fabrics, some ice blues, very, very, very washed out, very watercolor palette with lots of chiffon. And then I'm also seeing a lot of strapless or one shoulder, which to me says, I got all that real estate that I can decorate. The other thing I found interesting was that girls are picking dresses that are multi-purpose. So perhaps they're doing a Justice of the Peace ceremony, so it might be something short and strapless with a little jacket that's appropriate for just a courthouse ceremony. But then they could also wear that as a fun reception party dress when they get together with friends and family to have the big wingding. So that was very interesting to me. So as I was looking at some of those dress styles and how they might repurpose things or make them more personal, I thought, okay, so strapless, that gives me a lot of opportunity up here. I thought, how about body jewels? Seriously. Could you get anything more perfect? I don't think the camera's going to do this justice, but it is spectacular in person. Carolyn, I'm surprised they're not dead because she was petting them for like 5 minutes. But these are so pretty. She laughs because she knows it's true. But what I wanted to talk about was a different way to do floral jewelry, floral adornment, doing body jewels with flowers. So I have, just in case I hurt myself. No, not really. Well, they'd be handy. I have some Band-Aids. This is a big Band-Aid, right? And here's a smaller one. So what I have done here is I have cut those Band-Aids apart and I have created my own little sticky backed surface. And these are the fabric bandages, not the plastic ones like we had when we were kids. These are the ones that have some flex, like you can put around your finger or on an elbow, something like that, that's got a little more give. These are big Band-Aids. So what I did was go in and clip off the sticky parts, I don't care about the padded part, and created my own little sticker section, if you will. And then with that, what that allows me to do is take a flower, say, this sweet little stephanotis, and a small piece of the Band-Aid. Now, this is off the smaller Band-Aid. I'm going to cut this into smaller pieces because I don't really need a whole bunch of it. So just like my glue dots, I get a little frugal and chop those bad boys up. So now I have basically a fingernail, sized piece of that adhesive bandage. And then I'll take my stephanotis. I know, I can hear you all screaming right now. And I'm going to cut the tube off, just like that. And just leave myself with the flared portion of the flower. And then what I will do is use a little of the Oasis Cold Adhesive and attach that to that little bit of bandage. This gets a little tricky because there's nothing in the middle. And then I'm going to accent that with a little rhinestone. There's my jewel, because y'all know it wouldn't be me if it didn't have some bling, right? So while that glue sets up, what's happening out there in Tulip Town? Anybody saying hello? Do I have any?
Got lots of tulips over in YouTube land.
Awesome.
We have Sonette. I got tongue-tied there. Debbie, Heidi, Rose, Leslie, Ann, Sue, Jean, Dennis, Paula, Ashley, Deborah, Lisa, Bay Area Aquarius, Rachel, Doreen from Cameroon, and Morag from Scotland.
Wow. Hello, international YouTubers. You know, you guys are pretty amazing. It's like if you're international, you're on YouTube, and if you're not, you're on Facebook, although we do get, some Canadians. I recognize that you're not the northern state. I get that. I live in Washington. You're your own country. It's all good. Marisa, what's happening on your side?
Yes, in Facebook land, we have John, Christy, Denise, Kathleen, Gerald, Beatrice, Roxy, Wayne, Tomasi, who's going to be here.
Tomasi, you're going to be here in 2 days.
And Chris, Casey, Cam, Lori, Robin, Gracie, Ann, Kim, Ashley, Ayana, Jim, Nikki, Scott, Peter, Trish, and Lori. Oh, and Annalise just popped in.
Oh, very good. Annalise, good for you. Well, welcome everybody. Super happy to have you joining us today. I love wedding work. I love this fussy little hand stuff. Not everybody does, but we all have our callings and our happy spots, and mine's doing little intricate things like this. Did anybody have any answers to my question about personalization?
I have a couple.
All right, what you got?
Let's see here. So Cherie did a boutonniere with pine cones for the father of the bride who loved the outdoors.
Okay, cool. I like that.
And then Berga did flowers on her sister's bust for her wedding, which included a big purple bow.
Nice. Okay.
And lastly, Robin put the first ring of the father, put the first ring of the father of the bride that gave to the mother of the bride in the bouquet.
Okay, I got that. I tracked with you there. Very fun. So a little familial personalization there. I like that. Very cool. So what I'm adding right here, these are, you can get them at the craft store. You can probably get them at your floral wholesaler. They are just a little glue-backed rhinestone. You could use rhinestone sprays as well. Something like this as well to do that. I just happen to have these hanging around here. And normally I would use a tweezer to be able to pick them up because it sticks to your finger, and I'm not having much luck without it. So I'm going to use the little throat of the stephanotis as my little pickup tool because it fits perfectly over that rhinestone and I can just pop it right in there. And then maybe one of the Merlot colored ones. I don't need to cut it, we'll just tear it off. Okay, I have to cut it. Normally, when I don't want them to fly off, they just pop right off. There we go. And do the same thing. I'll just add that into the glue. Now you're probably going, what in the stick is she doing with these things? Well, I'll show you in just a minute. But the thing I found fascinating about those different dress styles was how varied they were, more so I felt than in years past, and how much reuse people were planning on getting out of them. It's not unusual to have a reception gown as well as, oh, that one's already got one in there. No wonder it won't stick. It's not unusual to have a reception gown as well as your main wedding dress if it's quite different. If you couldn't make your mind up, or if your wedding dress is beautiful but not necessarily super comfortable. You know what I'm talking about. Some of those you can't breathe in, and if you want to eat, you're going to want to have something that moves a little bit. So I just thought, as with anything, especially bridesmaids and brides, if you have a bouquet that you're carrying and the ceremony's over, you're not usually holding that bouquet any longer. So giving them something different that still is floral, that helps them carry on the festive theme, is a fun way to go. So now I've got those stephanotis on there and they're setting up a little bit. So then on the larger piece, either one that I haven't cut apart or on a larger section, I'll take one of these ranunculus that Carolyn loves so much. I have to agree with her. They are spectacular. I don't know that the camera is going to do them justice, but they are just ridiculous. Ranunculus, so pretty. And then I'm going to put some glue on the back side. As you remember, that Oasis Floral adhesive is liquid and it needs to set up a little bit before we put things together. And if you put a little bit of glue on the opposite item, so when you put them together it's sticky to sticky, that helps really well. Put a little bit more on this one. And I am catching the cut part of the stem. That Oasis adhesive will not only hold the flower in place, but it helps seal off that cut wound on the stem of the flower, which will help seal moisture in. And of course, when I'm done, I would saturate these with Crowning Glory because I'd want them to stay healthy and beautiful and intact for as long as possible. So I'll put a little bit of glue on this and give those a second. So any personalization ideas over on YouTube, Carolyn?
Yes.
All right, what you
Couple
got?
of them just popped in.
Cool.
Dennis, let's see, he personalized an entire wedding with Star Wars themes, figurines, and the bouquets were in lightsabers.
Okay, that's over the top and I love it. Star Wars theme. Very cool. All right.
And then Jean included a grandmother's necklace on a bouquet handle and also grandfather's military medal and dog tags wrapped around the bouquet handle.
Oh, okay, now you guys are gonna make me cry. That's awesome. I love personalization, and I feel that with Pinterest, bless its heart, it can be a wonderful tool, and it also can be a challenge sometimes for us as florists when people come in with this Pinterest board with this perfect vision of their wedding. I think personalization is great in that we can take a look at what they've shown us. It gives us a lot of insight into their look and their feel and what they want, but then start asking those really good questions so you can take it as inspiration and make it personal to them. What I always tell the students in the classroom is Pinterest is a great starting point. But for example, Caledonia comes in with a Pinterest board and she said, here's my perfect wedding. And I say, great. Is that your wedding or was that Marisa's wedding that you repinned? That Marisa had repinned from Carolyn's perfect wedding. So it was actually Carolyn's wedding, but then Marisa did it and then Carolyn did it. So it's really not, Caledonia did it. So it's really not Caledonia's wedding, but I can take that and give it a new twist, make it personal to Caledonia. So I love the dog tags. I love the necklace. I love the Star Wars theme. I bet that was a hoot. I bet that was an absolute hoot. If you have pictures, post those in the Tulip Tribe. We want to see those. I'm more of a Star Trek girl than Star Wars, but still, live long and prosper. Okay, so now my glue has set up. So I'm going to attach my ranunculus to that little bit. Oh, I did it on the wrong one. Well, close enough. It'll work. And the same here. Get that secured. And then I cut off a couple little pieces of this lamb's ear. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. It is just fantastic. Carolyn is petting the ranunculus. I'm petting the lamb's ear. We're just having a lovely time here with textures today. So then I'm going to take just a little bit of that Oasis adhesive and put it again on that cut edge of my lamb's ear, couldn't get the glue out, and tuck it up in under that ranunculus. So I just have a little bit of contrast in color, contrast in texture, and maybe a second one on there. Don't need a lot, but I just like how they work together.
Michelle?
Yeah.
So earlier, and I can only assume because I know your language, did you say those ranunculus were redonkulus?
Redonkulus,
Okay,
I
because
did.
John said, well, would that make them redonkulus?
Yes, they're delicious is what they are.
And then shout out to Cherie. Shout out to Ramona. It's her first time joining us.
Welcome, Ramona. Oh, good. Okay, Tulips, make her feel welcome. We don't want her not to come back. We want her to make this her weekly Wednesday visit with us. So glad you're here, Ramona. So what I have here is rubbing alcohol to go with my Band-Aids in case I cut myself. I shouldn't say that. Now I probably will. But what I want to do is I'm going to clean off my skin, get rid of any oils, any perfumes, any lotions, anything like that, so that I can then adhere. Oh, now you see where I'm going. I can adhere these to my skin. And I would normally do my neck, but I'm going to do my arm instead because, I can't see what I'm doing on my neck. So if this were the bride, let's pretend that was her shoulder or her clavicle area right in here. And I'm doing kind of a winding thing going up over. So I would take that rubbing alcohol and make sure there isn't anything on her skin. It's dry, nice and dry. And then make sure it's nice and dry. Dry that down. Then I can come in with my flower on that sticky fabric. Okay, it's a Band-Aid, right? So it's okay for your skin. You're not going to have any funky reaction to it. And then I can come right in and secure that to the bride. Then I could come in with the stephanotis on their little pieces as well and create my collage, if you will, of flowers. And that's if I can get the Band-Aid off this one. But you could do this all the way across the front of the bride. If her gown was strapless and was low back, maybe you could do something that's asymmetrical. Maybe it's starting on one side and coming up over the shoulder and coming across the back. How beautiful would that be? Then if her bouquet had these flowers in it, it's a nice connection. But when she gets to the reception, or when the quote ceremony is over and she's put her bouquet down, this still gives her the flowers that she had, but not something she has to keep track of. Plus, just think of all the cool photo opportunities there would be. Got a little carried away when I cut this one and didn't leave myself a little tail for it. There we go. Persistence. All right. So then I would come in and just add another one, like so, and then that other ranunculus, you could just continue on around, attaching those to the person. Just a thought for you, just a little flower jewelry. We talk about different kinds of floral jewelry, different ways we can do earrings and necklaces and things like that. This is just another tool in your toolbox to give you something else, something different, something unique that could make it personal to that bride. Somebody mentioned that they had the first ring from their mother's wedding. I got that wrong, but you know what I meant. Why not be able to include a charm or maybe an earring or something? You could certainly secure it in there without damaging it, but include that as part of the jewelry. I don't know. You guys are smart. You come up with some new ways to use the technique. I just come up with the ideas. It's what you guys do to implement them that makes them really fun. So any questions out there?
I have a couple.
All right, fire away.
Well, first off, I'm going to say to Scott, I might have to come out there next year and help because he has an Alice in Wonderland and a Tim Burton themed wedding.
Okay, the Tim Burton theme sounds super fun.
But Lynn wants to know if you ever use petal proofer on your body flowers.
A great question, Lynn. You absolutely could use petal proofer. If I'm working with anything in the chrysanthemum family, I absolutely do. If they're button palms or cushion palms or spiders, something like that, cut the stem off flush in the back and then give it a nice coating with the petal proofer to keep things intact. And then I would still use my Oasis floral adhesive to secure it, but that definitely helps keep those little petals intact. Those petal attachments are so tiny in there in the center of the flowers. As they start to dehydrate, that's when you start to have petal loss. So if you can, it doesn't stop the petal loss, it just glues the petals together so they don't fall off. So it's kind of a trick, but it's a good trick. Did you have another question over there, Marisa?
I did.
Okay.
Well, yep, the lamb's ear that you have there.
Yeah.
So Lori has some in her yard, and it doesn't seem to last very long. Do you have any tips on extending the life or helping them stay alive?
Lamb's ear. Wow, Leanne might have to weigh in on this one. I think just making sure you have it very well hydrated. It is probably one, much like Dusty Miller, that would benefit from quick dip on the front end, and then keeping it refrigerated. If you have a cooler, keeping it in the cooler till you're ready to work with it. It is a floppy leaf even when it's growing on the plant. The one thing I don't do with my with my lamb's ear is I don't put Crown and Glory on it because it changes the surface texture of the. I'm sorry, I just can't quit playing with this. Janet's watching. She goes, "Don't touch the flowers." It changes the surface texture of the leaf itself, so that's the only thing I wouldn't probably hose down with Crown and Glory. The ranunculus and the stephanotis, absolutely, but probably not the lamb's ear. But I would say just make sure it's well hydrated, quick dip it, keep it refrigerated until you're ready to use it, and cross your fingers. It can be a little persnickety for sure. Any questions over on your side of the world, Carolyn?
No. Stasia is curious though, is there a list somewhere of blooms that work well for body work?
Good question. A list of blooms that are good for body work. Not really a specific list, but two things to keep in mind. One, that they do well without a water source. So stephanotis are kind of borderline, I would say, but for the purpose, the duration of the event, perfectly fine. Obviously, you're not going to chop them up for home delivery. This is event work. So things that do well without a water source. Your orchid family is great. Roses, spray roses. Otherwise, your heads are too big. Carnations, in most cases, the calyx is too long, so you get a weird attachment if you left it long. However, having said that, you could come in and trim the calyx off the carnation just like I did on the stephanotis. And as you did that, when you go in and trim, hold it very tightly. Leave a little bit of the calyx because it's kind of like a rubber band around all those little petal attachments. And then you could come in, of course I put the cap back on my glue, wasn't that efficient? Come in with your adhesive and squirt into the cut portion of your flower, like so. And then you could attach that onto your Band-Aid. Now, in this case, I went to the store to get the round fabric Band-Aids. 2 stores, nobody had them. And then I got angry and quit. So then I just brought the great big ones that I cut. But you could do that same thing, cutting the calyx off if you wanted to use the carnation because of the color or whatever you were doing. And then once that sets up, see how much shorter that would make it. It's going to make it about the same height as that ranunculus. And then that would also give you room to tuck maybe mums or filler flowers or other items in underneath it. The other consideration, which I just said you could do something different, would be a flat flower. So something like ranunculus, anything in the mum family. Gosh, what else would be a good flat flower? Gerbera daisy, the micro daisies or the small daisies would be wonderful as well. Only because if it doesn't have a calyx, it's going to sit much closer to the skin at that point. But things that do well without water and a flat backed flower would be my first 2 choices, or a carnation that you then cut the calyx off. So contradicted myself right out of the gate. Caroline, what you got?
Dennis had a great tip for using the lamb's ear leaves.
Yeah.
Is to back it with a fabric leaf.
Oh, great idea. Okay. Backing it with a fabric leaf is a wonderful idea. Also using salal or something like that. We do that with Dusty Miller quite a bit to give it some support because it is so weak and it's hard to pin through sometimes. So great tip. Yeah. Good. See, you guys don't need me. You got this handled. I'm just going to go home now. Except I have more fun things to show you. So we were talking a little bit about personalization, making it better than the Pinterest boards that they show you. So I like monograms. I have like a bazillion M's everywhere in my house. My name's Michelle. Marisa thought this was for her. She got all excited. I'm like, no, it's not. We'll share it. But I know we have some issues getting some supplies now. Sometimes you can't find those foam tiles with the oasis on the top that you can sculpt, the sculpting tiles. Or you're not finding the styrofoam sheets like you've wanted for sculpting for sympathy work. So think outside the box, people. We, as florists, are the original MacGyver. You know, the guy that can like fly a plane and out of a paperclip kind of thing. We are so good at looking at an item and reimagining its purpose or its use. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. What if you can't find what you want, i.e. the sculpting tiles or styrofoam, to create a form of something? Well, this is going to be really shiny, is just a chunk of insulation. I have 3 or 4 of these rolling around my house. This is like you would use in a house. It's rigid foam insulation. It has the foil covering on both sides of it. This has a great big word, polyisocyanurate. How about just rigid foam insulation? That's what you're looking for. But it has basically the same properties as styrofoam as far as what you're working with. And you can cut it with a serrated knife, like a bread knife, or if you have an old Ginsu from the state fair laying around somewhere. That's what I use to cut foam at my shop. But it would not be Live with Michelle without power tools, right?
Whoa!
I know. So I used a jigsaw because it gives me lots of control and I can do some very nice intricate cuts while I still support my materials. So what I did was I took a Sharpie marker and I drew out the form, in this case an M, that I wanted to cut on my my rigid foam insulation, and then I just used my jigsaw to cut it out. Then, because through the magic of television, it's shiny, so you need to cover that shiny part with something else. I used, wherever I put it, I used Design Master spray paint in basil because it's kind of a nice mossy tone. It knocked down that metallic reflective sheen. That way, as I added moss to my M, it made it less noticeable if I had a blank space. Tip also, if your moss is a little less than fresh looking, when you're done, hit your whole finished piece with the basil. It has just enough color in it that it kind of revives that tone in your moss and makes it look a little fresher. So what I used for applying the moss to this monogram was the Super 77 spray glue. Now, we don't use spray glues and such here in the studio because it gets all over the equipment. You could use your Oasis floral adhesive. That would work as well. But you're going to need to put it on and spread it around and it gets a little messy. So I would recommend you pick up a package of just latex exam gloves. You can get these at Safeway anymore now. Helps protect your hands and keeps you from getting stuck to everything that you touch. So what I did when I did this was I sprayed that form with the Super 77 spray glue and then took my sphagnum moss and pressed it on there. And the nice thing about that is then you can squeeze it and really push it into that foam insulation. And then the other option you have, of course, because again, wouldn't be Michelle without power tools, is glue, hot glue. That works just fine. You could use pan melt and brush it on. I just happen to have a glue gun, and it would be the same concept. Just putting a bead, or a swirl in this case, ooh, nice and hot, huh? A little bit of smoke action there, onto that.
That's a legit glue gun.
I know! I have all the cool toys, Marisa. So then when it starts to bubble a little bit, then I can go in with my moss. And the other benefit is I'm not touching that glue and burning my hand. Now, you're like, oh my God, Michelle, you're gonna melt that. No, I'm not. This isn't styrofoam. If I had done this with styrofoam, as I'm sure we have all tried at some point, it just starts to melt like a snow cone. It just dissolves into itself. But by using the rigid foam insulation, I can use the hot glue gun if I don't have the spray glue or I don't want to use 63 tubes of Oasis floral adhesive. So then I can come back and just use my glue gun. And just your regular craft glue gun would work well. I love this because it's battery powered and I can take it wherever. I'm not constrained by having electricity, which is a bonus, because most of the time I do my stinky projects, my gluing, my spraying, things like that. I take a table outside and do it, unless it's windy, and then like everything blows away. But
Michelle?
Yes.
Can you actually share like the brand of that glue gun? Because some people asking, where can I get that?
Where can you get that?
What glue gun is that?
So this particular glue gun is from Ryobi. Oh, there we go. It's from Ryobi. You can get it at Home Depot. It's their house tool brand. This is part of their 18 volt battery system. So they have like 250 different tools that'll run off the little battery like that. It's very hot. I like to use the construction grade glue when I do this because then I know it's not going to come apart. So now I have my M finished, like so, and I can turn my glue gun off and get rid of my gloves. So now you're saying, okay, that's great, Michelle, but what are you going to do with that? Well, I could do a lot of things with this, actually. Keep in mind that rigid foam insulation comes in a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet, so like the size of a sheet of plywood. Well, if I did that here, I couldn't get it on camera. Plus, that'd be a lot of moss to try and get done in just an hour. So I did a much smaller version, but the technique, the concept would still be the same. If I had that full sheet of insulation, pencil out whatever the form is, in my case it's a big M, cut it out, paint it, and then moss it. So now I have something at the entrance to the event. Could be a backdrop for photos. It could be propped in front of a flower wall. It could be behind a sweetheart table, any number of things at that point. But it's about the personalization part. That's what I thought was really fun. And just the technique of using something unexpected. If you can't get what you want, what else could you use? In this case, rigid foam insulation. So here I could put some fishing line or some very thin wire on the backside and hang this. Maybe this is, so my husband's name is Doug. I usually call him the Hubs, but he gets a name today. So if I had an M and a D, maybe these are hanging on the church doors or the entrance to the venue. There's an M and a D. Those are our initials, right? If someone's last name started with an M, you could just do one big, large one. So just a way to personalize things. I know we hang wreaths and swags on doors, but why not do something like this, which could then become a keepsake for them, right? Nice little add-on item, but also something that they get to keep after the event as well. So it's cool like it is, but it needs flowers, right? So thinking about that, while I grab some flowers, any questions out there or people rolling their eyes on YouTube at me? Like, what are you doing, Michelle?
They're just asking about the glue gun.
All right, guys.
I've got some more personalizations coming in.
Oh, good. What do you have, Carolyn?
Liz said she did a wedding on the beach recently where the boutonniere, she found dried mini starfish that she put in them.
Oh, that's wonderful. Ooh, I like the beachy theme. I like that a lot. I have been saving seashells from the Baja Peninsula in California, Mexico area, for years. I have 7 totes of seashells, like the Costco sized totes of seashells, because I'm waiting for that one bride that says, I've always wanted a beach theme wedding, but once
I think we need to do a beach theme class.
I think
You've got the entire assortment.
I do. I have them all, but I keep waiting for that one bride that says they want that and then lets me execute the vision, because I don't want tropical party beach theme. I'm thinking something a little more elegant, but at any rate. So cool. I love the mini starfish. Those I don't have. So props on that. So what I'm doing here is I am taking the calyx off those roses and I'm going to, I can just glue these. So you asked earlier about what flowers do well for body flowers without moisture would be little spray roses would work. Woo, come on. So I can tuck a few of those onto the front and I'm just gluing and securing them. A carnation. Look at those carnations. Oh my gosh, they're so pretty. We're fighting over who gets to take some home. I could cut this very short and just poke it, just insert it right into that styrofoam, take my knife, make a little hole and then insert that right in. If I put it into where I put the hole, that is. Could add a little bit of Oasis floral adhesive to that as well to make sure that it was secure. Could do the same thing with some Hypericum berries. And you're going, Michelle, it doesn't have a water source. No, it doesn't. But if you made this on Wednesday or Thursday, Crown and Glory did, and kept it in the cooler, it's going to be just fine. It doesn't need a whole lot of attention at that point. Oh, look at that. Carolyn, what is this called? Sparkle?
Shimmer.
Shimmer. It doesn't have any fragrance at all, but it is so beautiful. It's a peachy pink pale with just a tinge of darker pink on the tips. It's so pretty. So with this same thing, I could just create a small hole in that insulation and insert, you're crunching as I push it in, and insert my rose down into that. So that would give me a cute little floral accent on my monogram. So I had an M and a D, and maybe the D has some on the curved portion of it. You could also cover the whole thing with flowers if you wanted. Absolutely, totally doable. If you did that, going back to the side that's not finished, I would still spray it green and I would still cover it with moss. I probably would not make it as dense a covering because it is a little more challenging to insert through the moss, the glue, the aluminum wrapping that's on it. So just a little less moss so it covers the aluminum but isn't as thick, as dense. So that, again, that could be something that's hung. That would be very pretty. But then Carolyn and I were playing around a little bit. We're like, well, what else could we do with that? How about this at the guest book table when you check in? How fun would that be? What could we do there?
Michelle, as you're grabbing all your things, you'll love this one. So Tara last weekend did a boutonniere with the wedding party hackles and flies from fly fishing. They were from Montana and the family loves the sport.
Awesome, 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 awesome. So here's a factoid about Teacher Michelle. I commercially tied flies when I was a youngster. I tied from age 8 to age 22 and I paid for college. So that's super awesome. So I have 2 wooden bamboo skewers like you put, kebabs on, and I can come through and just feed those up into the bottom of my letter. Kind of like cake monograms, right? I wouldn't put the mossy one on a cake though. I think that'd be kind of gross. But I have a low tray here, not quite that long, that has moss in it. And under that is saturated foam. How cute is that, huh? So coming back with some other materials, maybe I have some roses. Oh, that's the spray rose I just beat up. But then I could have some other little floral accents tucked off to the side. Do kind of a parallel placement of materials. Maybe some of those carns would be pretty.
So Dennis just sent over the Star Wars wedding.
Yeah.
And I don't think I caught this earlier. I can show you real quick, but it looks like the handle of the bouquet is a lifesaver.
Is the lightsaber?
I think
Nice!
Yeah, it's really cool.
That is super fun. That's where we get to be creative people. That's what I find so fascinating and so wonderful, is taking things that we don't necessarily think about and giving them new life, or something that means something to people. If they're a Star Wars fanatic, doing something that just makes it interesting and unique and personal to them. I think that's great. Flowers did I put in there?
Michelle,
Yeah.
your insulation board or whatever that thing's called,
Yeah.
what size was that again?
So it comes in a 4 foot wide by 8 foot tall piece, and it the brand that I had was Celotex, Celotex. But honestly, just go to your local hardware store or home improvement center, go to the insulation area and get the ones that are rigid foam insulation. That one's about 2 inches thick, that has the mylar or aluminum covering on it. Don't get the ones that are styrofoam. They're not sturdy enough. They won't support your stems as you insert stems into them, or even if you use water tubes. If you had a flower that was delicate and needed a water source, you could easily, like a ranunculus, I guess, would be a good one. If I needed a water source to insert in there, I could just use a small water pick. So it's a very short one, so you wouldn't have as much extension, but that would allow me to give it a water source. But as far as that, turn that so I can see what I'm doing. As far as the insulation goes, make sure that it's rigid foam insulation so you can get a really good secure placement of your materials. That's a little funky straight on center there, but then he's in water. He's going to drink hydrangeas. If you wanted to do that, hydrangeas in the little water pick would be great as well.
So Rachel has a question.
Sure.
She's asking, since you wouldn't be able to put a large piece in a flower cooler, would you have these flowers already sprayed with crowning glory?
Oh, you mean a big monogram? Absolutely. And if I were doing a big monogram, I think I would absolutely use the water tubes because it's going to be so much larger. You'll be able to have the extension that the water tube gives you, because then you could be using full heads of roses or full, at that point you could be using peonies even to insert in there, and on that larger piece you'd be fine. This is way too overwhelming on something this sized. You could do multiples, right? So maybe everything's monogrammed. Maybe this is at the check-in table or the guest book table, and maybe there's a larger M behind the cake or behind the sweetheart table, something like that. So it's basically just giving you some ideas, just some different techniques, things to think about, ways you can personalize it for the couple, and just upgrade that Pinterest board a little bit more than normal. Any other questions out there?
Let's see. So I just replied back to John, but he said, couldn't you bury that tube into the foam, then could switch out the flowers and with new water?
Sure, absolutely. You absolutely could do that. I inserted that tube at a little bit of an angle rather than straight in and out, just because it was a little large for this application. But if you were doing a larger piece, you could absolutely just tuck that short tube right in there. Because it has that rubber gasket on the top, it will hold the water even when it's at an angle. So that's a great way to do it. You could have all of your flowers tubed up and ready to go and keep them in the cooler, and then transport your mossed piece to the venue and then insert the flowers at that point. So that's one way to get around trying to get that whole piece into a flower cooler. If you have a walk-in, that's great, but if you have a reach-in, that's not going to work so well. Absolutely. So earlier in the week, I asked the Tulip Tribe, hey, talking about weddings, what do you want to know? What's going on? So I've learned to be careful what you ask for, because you had so many great suggestions, so many great questions, and it reminded me to tell you that almost everything that you asked about, let me look at my list: hanging flowers on brick walls, delivery packaging, mechanics of elevated centerpieces, calculating flowers for events. We are currently in the process of finishing the next two segments of the Wedding Floral Specialist class. We have two currently. We have bouquets to carry and flowers to wear. And right now we're working on ceremony flowers and reception flowers. Some of the things I showed today kind of fit into those areas. But so I'm not going to spill the beans on those yet, but those will be coming out later this summer. That's the plan, and early in the fall. But we are so excited to have those. That will be lessons or segments 3 and 4 of Wedding Floral Specialist. And then we'll have at least one more that focuses on the business aspect of it. So that might be that estimating flowers portion. So keep your eyes peeled. Stay tuned to the Tulip Tribe page, because you know we're going to tell you guys before we tell anybody else. Caledonia, if you get a chance, you want to throw up the link to those 2 classes. And Susie, if you could do the same, that'd be awesome. The other course that covers some of that is the boot camp, wedding boot camp class, which is a super fun one. We've got one coming up in a 3 weeks, I think, in June sometime, right? First part of June. And then we have one in October as well. So check the website for the current dates on those. But those are both wonderful classes. The other thing that you asked, and I apologize, somebody asked it in the Tulip Tribe last week, hey, if you didn't want to use floral netting, poultry mesh, chicken wire, to create an armature for a bouquet, could you use Oasis wire? Absolutely, yes you could. And somebody tagged me in there and we had a whole conversation, but I don't know what I had for breakfast today, so I apologize for not remembering who that was last week. So if you're watching today, please jump in, post, say, hey, that was me, and let's have a little more discussion on that. So I'm going to create an armature for a bouquet with the Oasis wire. Marisa, what you got going?
Yeah, I had the question. Oh, this is and then I forgot. So going back to the Wedding Floral Specialist courses, especially the flowers to wear. I had a couple people mention earlier when you were doing the body flowers that they've seen K-tape used a lot.
Yes.
Is there a section in there that shows how to use K-tape?
Yes, there is. There's an awesome section in there on how to use K-tape. One is a smaller design, whoops, squishing my ranunculus, something just a little bit larger than this, and then there's a very dramatic piece in there that Leanne demonstrates with the K-tape. Not always available. I mean, yes, there's Amazon, but sometimes you need it now, even tomorrow is too late. So that's why I thought the Band-Aid option is also a nice touch, because it is hypoallergenic for most people, that they can use them. You don't have to worry about that. I wouldn't just Oasis floral adhesive flowers to somebody. Well, I might if I didn't like them, but most of the time I'd use a Band-Aid. So yeah, so great question on the course there. The boot camp is more focused to the basics. It really gives you the basics of doing a wedding, the key components, bouquet, boutonniere, centerpieces, things like that. But it has some just wonderful, wonderful techniques included in that course as well.
And then also, with those wedding floral specialist classes, do you have to take the whole thing, or are they divided up in series? Can you choose?
Sure, gotcha. So the question was, with the wedding floral specialist program, do you have to take all of the classes, or can you pick and choose? The answer is yes. Yes, you can take all of the classes, or yes, you can pick and choose. Now, if you just want to up your body flowers game, flowers to wear, we have floral fascinators in there, and jewelry and all kinds of fun things. If you just want to take that course, you absolutely can. The upside to taking the boot camp and then going through all of the other courses, flowers to wear, bouquets to carry, and then the upcoming ceremony flowers, reception flowers, and then the business portion. When you have completed all that wedding floral specialist coursework, you are a Floral Design Institute certified wedding floral specialist. That's a designation that we offer. And if you do a lot of weddings and events, it does carry some weight. If it tells people that you've really specialized in your area of expertise and have some advanced skills. The mechanics of wedding work are just mind-boggling on occasion, and we have really enjoyed working on these new segments with the ceremony and reception flowers. Quite a few of them are large-scale pieces, so things that require installation in the mechanics and the techniques for doing that. So yes, you can, to answer the question very long-windedly, you can take the individual courses, but if you take all of the courses offered in that sequence, then you would become a certified wedding floral specialist. So great question, Marisa, thanks. Carolyn, anything over there in your
No,
land?
just lots of thumbs up and compliments, and everything's so gorgeous.
We had pretty product today, that's for sure. So did the person, is Karen Chandler on? If she is, does she remember who was in that thread that we were talking? It might have been Scott and Jim too, I can't remember, but at any rate.
I don't think I saw Karen today.
About
Okay.
that?
Mm-hmm.
I think Rachel said it was her. Rachel Bird?
Oh, okay, Rachel, yes. So, perfect. Thank you for reminding old lady brain here. So what I did was I just noodled that Oasis wire around. I took a couple pieces because I decided I wanted a little bit more. Then kind of decide how big you want that armature to be. And just like if you've ever seen me make the noodled wire cuff, same thing. I'm just wrapping it around my fingers. But then I do want that other straight piece to stitch through and hold things together. And it is really just random at that point. The benefit to that is it keeps that armature, which is what you're creating, that armature from blowing apart as you create things. The same way we would do with our floral netting, stitching it closed with wire or using the cut ends to lock over each other just to help hold it from coming too far apart. And then make sure, I know I sound like a broken record, curl those edges over because you will hurt you or a loved one with those very, very sharp edges on the aluminum wire. So now I can pull it around. I could give myself a nice open circular form if I was doing a round bouquet. And if you don't have enough tightness or enough control, just move the pieces around. So I could do something like that to give myself a round bouquet armature. If I were doing, say, a crescent, a crescent or a side-to-side bouquet, something more linear, I can just squish it in the middle and I can pull it out long. Now it's going to give me a different armature to do that. We're seeing a lot of cascade bouquets, which I think are fabulous. Me personally, they're my favorite. I love the elegance of them, and they're also singularly flattering, regardless of the dress type or the body type. You can make it a short teardrop. You can make it a ginormous Princess Diana monster bouquet, but because of that form, it's very flattering for every body type that carries it, which I think is always really nice, you know, because on your special day, you want to feel pretty and beautiful and look appropriate. So if I wanted to do something that was more cascading, whoop, look at that, I just blew it right apart. I could create a form that gave me something more triangular that would allow me to create my cascading form as well. And then this just allows me to start tucking my flowers through. The thing I love about using the Oasis wire to do this is it gives me a lovely armature to support my materials, but it's decorative. I don't have to hide it. Rescus don't want to come out and play with me today. So if I were using floral netting, chicken wire, poultry mesh, I would want to make sure that my armature was perfectly concealed. Now, because this is decorative, I don't have to conceal that if I don't want to. If I want to have some of it peek out as I create it, as I create the bouquet, that's perfectly fine. I always liken it to undergarments in the classroom. Some are meant to be seen and others are not. But this gives you something that, if it's seen, is still acceptable and still pretty. So then as I would go through and add my materials, maybe doing more of a side-to-side bouquet. What do we, oh, we have plumbosa, we've got some willow yew.
Ooh, shout out to Patty. It looks like she's gonna sign up for the wedding boot camp.
Oh, good, yay, Patty. You will really like that class, I promise. It takes you through so many different things to do a wedding. We have a lot of folks who work in shops. They, the shop owners will send, it's digital, it's online, but have their employees take the class as a refresher, just as something to kind of up their skills or remind them what they want their shop to work on. Thought I had something else over here. Any other questions out there? No? Nice and quiet today,
Yeah,
huh?
I know they're all just watching.
I'll just oohing and awing.
Yeah, at the groovy foliage.
I mean, we have a comment here. John said that if he ever got into weddings, he would feel like he would accidentally put an item that say something like the bride was allergic to or something. How do you avoid doing something like that?
During your consultation, that's always a good time to ask anything. If people have flower allergies, most of the time, if someone is allergic to something, for example, some people just cannot handle the scent of oriental lilies or gardenias. They're too overpowering for people. They may tell you that, but it's always a good practice to ask and say, does anyone have flower allergies? Do we need to focus on dried and preserved flowers so that we don't have hay fever attacks or something during the ceremony? So that's a really, really great question. We have so many products available to us today. Yes, fresh is beautiful and lovely and everything else, but if people do have allergies, we have lots and lots of options to accommodate someone with an allergy. That's great. So as I add a few flowers, I probably won't get this all finished on here, but as I add a few things, you'll see that the armature itself starts to disappear a little bit, but at the same time, because of that metallic wire, you're still seeing some of the sparkle. You're still seeing a little bit of it. And if that's in your way there, you can twist it up out. It's a little more forgiving than the floral netting, I think. It lets you adjust as you go. And again, if you don't get it fully covered, it's not so much of a crisis. Look at that gorgeous peony. That helps pull some of that red into the design. Matches with our armature that we have going. And what are these roses called again, Carolyn? Shimmer. Thank you. I should have written that down. Sparkle. It's like we were talking about quicksand roses the other day. Sandstorm. And then the whole weekend I kept calling these roses sandstorm, and people were looking at me like, what are you talking about? They're Carolyn's roses. I don't know. She made it up. But yeah, we even get confused on occasion as to what we're working with and what things are called. But again, so back to Rachel. Thank you for the question. Yes, if you know me and have seen most of my stuff, if I can't work Oasis wire into it, it's just not a good live. Power tools and Oasis wire. That's kind of my happy place right there. How about some of these? Oh yeah, those look fun. So thank you all for joining us today. We know you have a lot of busy lives and a lot of things going on, but being able to spend an hour with the Tulip Tribe every week is wonderful. And until we see you next week, have a great week, flower the world, and remember to do something you love. Bye guys. I'm going to finish this now.